Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Excuse the dark lighting situation, it's kind of gray out today. It's a very nasty gray old day. But I got an email, somebody asking me about whether or not I think there should be more political music in the mainstream right now, and why there's sort of an overall lack of political music in the mainstream. He was citing the fact that you can look at music from the 60s, music from the 70s, and see that there was all kinds of political music coming out back then, Bob Dylan's music, all that political folk music, politically charged hip hop, all that anti-Reagan hardcore punk in the 80s. And, all fine and good examples of politically charged music that came out years and years and years ago. However, while there isn't a whole lot of political music now in the mainstream, let's keep in mind that while hindsight is 2020 and we can see what music came out in the past is the most meaningful, the most political, the most significant, the most artistic, so on and so forth. Back then, people enjoyed pop music just as much as they do now. Down in the description box, I'm going to link to a few, Billboard Hot 100 charts from the 60s. And you could look at these, huge hit songs that ruled the charts for week after week after week after week after week for yourself and see that, these number one hits, these huge hits, like... They were political songs, and that's not to say that political music never charted or never held any sort of significance in popular culture decades and decades and decades ago. Not the case. However, a majority of people, the lowest common denominator, which you need to appeal to in order to get music on the charts, needs to address and approach themes that appeal to the widest number of people. And when you do that, you're talking about things like love and heartbreak and friendship, these truly universal themes that don't really address difficult, intricate, specific political issues. And when you do have political songs that, sort of take the world by storm, they typically are masked in some kind of shroud of catchiness or poppiness, like Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA or something like that. Or, you have Bob Dylan's The Times They Are A-Changin', which, it's certainly a political it's certainly a political song. It's a politically charged song. But a lot of the themes and a lot of the messaging in that song is just kind of like, it's very general. It's kind of a bit of an addressing of a bit of a general power structure between the people and politicians and, this need for change. What exactly that change is, Bob Dylan does not go deep into the details, but, it's a very kind of general message and need and want for change. Listen, I think if there's a lack of political music in the mainstream today and overall, though I don't entirely agree because there's quite a bit of quite a bit of political music that I review on my channel, and I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. It may not be the most popular thing out there, but I certainly try to hype it up the best that I can. Recent example being like Rhapsody's Lila's Wisdom, which I think is a fantastic record, but I digress. If there's a lack of political music out there today, I feel like it's partially because we have this huge thing called the internet, we have this huge thing called social media, and a lot of people's ideas, wants, desires, passions, and messages when it comes to politics are mostly spilling out over here onto social media. Excuse me again. I'm not saying social media is the best vehicle for this discussion. Like, obviously it has its flaws, especially platforms like Twitter, where, you do have that 140 character limitation and it's hard to get context into whatever message you're delving forward into because people just see one tweet and there may be 5 or 6 other tweets related to it that actually kind of give the full view of what you're actually trying to get across. But I feel like a lot of people's emotions on these issues are spilling out now into social media, not necessarily in music. Most people, like back in the 60s and 70s, when, you could look at those times, you could look at things like the civil rights movement, you could look at things like Vietnam and see that there's a lot of political turmoil during those decades. But back then, just like now, people enjoyed music as an escape. People enjoyed music as merely a form of entertainment, not necessarily as a vehicle to get their political points across. And music, as much as I love political music, some of my favorite songs and some of my favorite artists do write music that is very socially conscious, music is not necessarily the best vehicle for this thing because politics are complicated and politics are super nuanced, and it's difficult to get these messages across in an effective way in a song, which typically music is so open to interpretation anyway. So there's really no true guarantee that your message is going to be correctly or properly interpreted by the audience of people listening to the song. On top of that, you have other limitations to, your messaging and to the reach that message is going to have when you put your message in music, because some people don't like political music at all. Some people don't like the kind of music that you're making. Maybe you're not the best singer. Maybe you're not the best guitar player. Maybe the production isn't the best. Maybe the songwriting is just mediocre or something. The songs that have a socially conscious message that are usually the most successful are the ones that typically kind of trick the audience into listening to a song with a socially conscious message. So politics and music, I think it's great. I think it's good. Again, I've championed records on the channel like To Pimp a Butterfly, very political record. But, that stuff is just not going to be appealing to everyone. And when artists sort of put all of their eggs into a political basket, you do kind of run a huge risk, because that naturally is not going to appeal to everyone, even to people who may necessarily agree with the point that you're making, because not everybody sort of seeks out that in their music. Some people just simply, want to keep their entertainment and their politics separate, and just that be that. And listen, I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a thing. And I'm just saying that's currently why we don't see a whole lot of politics in music. And you are sadly mistaken if you are to look back in the past and say, man, we had so much political music. Political music was everywhere. I mean, certainly you did have your huge, landmark political songs in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, so on and so forth. You had bands like Rage Against the Machine in the 90s. But, you had a lot of dudes who were just like total bros listening to Rage Against the Machine, who didn't give a shit about communism or, the power struggle of the people and, the wealthy class and so on and so forth. Like, I know when I was younger listening to Rage Against the Machine, a lot of that stuff resonated with me and I paid close attention to it. But a lot of people just listened to Rage because they thought it was loud rock music, because it was awesome and crazy and energetic and exciting. And, it had a kind of, a rebellious tone to it, which a lot of people enjoyed too. But, most people listen to Rage Against the Machine without really caring that much about the band's politics, honestly. And again, that's not to discount their politics, but the thing is, most people don't really think in those nuanced political terms like that. And, most people don't necessarily look for deep political messaging in their music. I mean, I guess it's nice when it comes up, and it's nice when it actually resonates with people, instead of people either ignoring it or, not realizing it or just avoiding it altogether. But, it's political music has never been the standard, during any decade of popular music. Like, it's been out there, it's been relevant here and there, it has captured hearts and minds, and often it's easier for us to look back on it in the past and say, oh yeah, back then we had To Pimp a Butterfly, we had Damn, we had this record, we had J. Cole, but really, in the grander scheme of things, which is going to be forgotten 20 years from now, we have friggin' Bodak Yellow. And that's what most people are listening to. That's what most people are enjoying. And again, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing. I don't think it's necessarily a sign that people are less politically engaged than they should be or need to be. If you go online, you read articles, you look at the president, you look at social media, people are very engaged in the political conversation. People are very interested in politics. People are always talking about something political to some degree. But don't take music as some kind of rule of thumb or like dipstick to show, oh, wow, looks like we're talking about a lot of politics right now, or it looks like we're not talking about a lot of politics right now. Don't use the most popular music from the past to tell you whether or not things, as far as the music scene goes, were super political or not. Because, again, what we remember from the past is the best stuff, not all the stuff. And, keep track of what's happening now, because 20 years from now, that's exactly how it's going to be. You know, we're going to look back at the 2010s, and we're only going to remember the best stuff that came out, and we're going to throw away all the crap, and we're going to act like, man, music was so good back then, and all the political music too. But you know, hopefully that's just a little prediction that that ends up coming true. Because, you know, here's the thing. I have no reason to believe it'll play out any other way right now, because that's how it's played out for decade after decade after decade up until this point. Maybe it'll change this time. Maybe it'll change. But that's most likely how it's going to go down. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out, or you can hit up the link to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one. You're the best forever. Bye.